Welcome to Tried and True with a Dash of Woo, where we're all about mixing tried and true strategies that actually work with the magic of manifestation and the science of programming your unconscious mind so that you walk away feeling integrated, inspired, and aligned. I'm Renee Bowen, certified life and business coach, professional photographer, middle-aged wife, and mom to now 3 grown kids. I've built 2 multiple 6-figure businesses with 0 business training by digging in, learning the methods, and now I'm here to pass them all on to you. From photography and business strategies to energy healing, human design, and the basics of manifestation, we cover it all here. I'm here to help you embrace your multi-passionate brains and lean into the fastest and most efficient ways to reach your goals, whatever they may be. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, or maybe you're just here for the woo-woo, let's dive in and explore all the exciting ways to take your life, business, and self-improvement to the next level. Thanks for joining me, and get ready to be inspired. Hey friends, welcome back to the show. I hope you guys have had a really awesome summer as we are winding down, getting closer to fall and all things pumpkin spice because it's right around the corner. Before you know it, it's going to be Christmas. I know you don't want to hear that, but it's really something that we kind of need to be thinking about. Top of mind, especially for you photographers out there, any of you guys who are creative entrepreneurs though. As soon as like the end of August, the beginning of September, I guess really Labor Day hits, it feels like Christmas is going to be here in a hot second. And most of us just kind of slide into the holidays all frazzled, freaking out, because even if you were not super booked already right now with clients for fall, most of us probably do take on way too much. We don't really plan ahead. And then we get in that feast or famine mode of like work. We're like, trying to move the business forward and trying to actually do the things, right? Especially if you're a photographer, because I know this tends to be our super busy time of year. And it is where we make a lot of our money in Q4. So I get it. But too many of you guys just throw all the marketing to the wayside. In fact, a lot of you guys have reached out in the past and told me like, Renee, I really want to sign up for your coaching. I really want to sign up for your level up program and go deep dive with you. But I'm about to go into my busy season and I don't think I can focus on it. So my answer to that is, first of all, I totally get it. I understand. And the last thing I want you to do is be overwhelmed. However, if you don't start implementing something like this now, if you don't start changing things now when you are busy, it's never going to be the right time, first of all, right? It's never going to be the right time. So if you have the inclination and the thought, the idea, if it has come to you that I need to change some processes, I need to figure out this marketing, or I need to figure out my pricing, or whatever it is, or maybe there's multiple things that you've got to work on. If you are having those thoughts, then it is time. The time is now. Okay. You can't get this time back. So even though you're heading into a busy season, can you really afford to not do it? Is my question to you. Can you afford to wait longer? Right? Because think about it. Let's fast forward to January, when usually most photographers are super burnt out and exhausted. And a lot of us don't shoot a ton during January, or maybe we need to shoot in January, but we haven't done any marketing because we've been so busy, September through December. So we're not really marketing. We're just maybe pushing out some content from the sessions that we've done, but there's no strategy behind it. And so before you know it, it's January and now you are like hurting for clients. You're hurting for money. You don't have clients coming in. And now you have to use the money that you just made to get you through these winter months. Okay. I want that to change for you. I want you to go into January with surplus, and I want you to be able to continue to make money in the winter months, regardless of whether you have a studio or not. I want you to be able to continue to generate income for yourself and your business so that you are not stressed out. Okay. This is happening way too often. And it's not just the newer photographers, you guys. This is happening to people a lot in my coaching. I'm getting people who've been in business for many, many years. I'm talking 15 plus, and they are still having this issue. So guess what? It's not going to go away. If you don't fix it, it's not going to go away, but it will go away when you decide to focus on it. And when you decide that I'm not going to wait anymore, I'm not going to wait to have the business that I want. I'm going to do it now. And yeah, it might be a couple of months, 3 months of me having to make the time for this coaching, make the time to go through this content. But at the end of the day, this is what's going to set me up for a killer 2024. So if that's you, if you have that inclination that it is time, don't wait, book a call with me. Let's chat about how I can help you figure this out. Like, that's literally what I'm here for. And I love nothing more than to coach you guys through this kind of stuff. Like, the impact that this is having for so many of you just lights me up to no end. So I do have a couple of one-on-one spots open now that you can absolutely jump into if you are ready. I will put that link in the show notes. You can grab a call with me. We can chat. And if you feel like you want that, or maybe you can't invest at that level yet, that's totally fine. Elevate's $49 a month, you guys. There's literally no excuse. We have one Zoom call a month. You have access to all of the content online. I'm updating it monthly with new up-to-date materials for you guys. It's mindset, it's marketing, it's pricing. You come to me with a problem, I help you fix it. Literally $49 a month. There's no excuse. All of this is going to be in the show notes. Let's get to work. So on that note, you're going to love today's guest. I have Lyric Everly on the show today. Lyric is an entrepreneur. She runs many businesses. She's an award-winning cause advocate. She's based in Los Angeles. She's a Playboy creative, and she's all about how we can incorporate the play and the fun in our business, how we can have both. I mean, it's like the perfect topic, right? For tried and true with a dash of woo. And we definitely dive into all of those things. She's personally worked on projects for Amazon, American Express, Disney, Netflix, and she brings over 15 years of creative leadership to her incredible team at Everly Agency. She runs a branding agency as well. And she's presently working on a new wellness startup that we talk about, as well as a new podcast that I cannot wait for her to tell you guys about. Without further ado, let's dive into this awesome conversation with Lyric. Hello, Lyric. It is so nice to have you here.
Hey, Renee. Thank you so much for having me.
I want to speak to, so first of all, you've got so many awesome things going on. We're gonna kind of dive into a little bit of everything, but I love that you have a lot of things going on. And I feel like sometimes with a lot of the creatives that I work with, especially, they feel like they have all of these creative thoughts, right? And then all of these things that they want to do. And they're like, I don't know how I'll possibly going to be able to get them all done, but you seem to be able to do that. And I think that's fascinating. So first of all, tell us a little bit about where you are with your business, kind of what your passions are, and then like kind of how you got here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started out as a kid creating music. So when I was 5 years old, I saw somebody perform in church and I told my mom, I was like, that's it. Like, I just knew like I wanted to do it. And so she put me into piano lessons and I started like making up little songs on my Rainbow Bright tape recorder. So that was my first introduction to creativity. And I carried that forward where I started performing as a teenager. And then by my early 20s, I had put out some albums. And in the process, I had designed my own album artwork. And so that ended up being the start to my next phase of creativity, which was doing graphic design and branding and illustration. And so by my mid-20s, I had already started a creative agency with my ex down in Austin, Texas. And so I've been doing branding and design work for, I guess, like 15 years now. And it's been a beautiful ride. Like, I've had several iterations of the agency, but presently I have my own company called Everly Agency, and it's 3 years strong. We just had our 3-year anniversary a couple months ago. And I run it from Los Angeles, but I have a remote team. And it's been beautiful. It's been, very fulfilling and lots of twists and turns, but I wouldn't change a thing.
That's amazing. I love that. And you're also about to start a new podcast as well. which I think is going to be super fun. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, or is it still in its early stages?
No, I'd love to talk about it. So yes, I'm very excited to start this. And also I love that I get to come on a Girl Boss podcast like yours, because it's very inspiring to see how you're handling it and how you're presenting yourself as like the divine feminine. And I love it.
Oh, thank you.
So I'm starting a podcast called Business in Bed. And this came about, first of all, because my last 3 companies that I started, I mostly developed them and worked on them from bed. Like cozy is my favorite feeling. I love like the idea that you can be like really focused and doing focused work, but you can be comfortable while doing it.
Yeah.
And pleasure became a main theme for me in the process, because when you are working so hard and you are putting in maybe those like 14, 16-hour days, you want to make sure that you're also leaning into the enjoyable, pleasurable side of life.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I started to really take notice of that, where it's not just, sexual pleasures, of course, but it's like savoring an orange or making sure that you step out to see the sunset. Those simple pleasures in life became really important to me. And so when I decided I wanted to start a podcast, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do business in bed, because it pairs a lot of the worlds and things that I love into one little package. And so I'm going to be interviewing successful entrepreneurs from their beds. So I want to make sure that we're leaning into that fun, kind of cheeky side of it too.
I love it.
And we're launching in a couple months, and it's been a joy.
Oh, I cannot wait for that. That is a really, really fun idea. And it's so, like you said, most of us do, right? Like, I definitely am right there with you. I like to get a lot of stuff done from bed. And I mean, why not? Why not if you can? And finding those little simple pleasures is a really big thing that I've been trying to focus on myself this past year specifically. I always like to try and remind myself, but sometimes it's just harder than others. And I've really been intentional about it this past year. Like, no, I'm going to notice the sunset and how my feet feel in the grass. And, just being really mindful about just simple things. Like, one of the simplest things, and it sounds silly, that my husband and I have been doing probably for the last 2 or 3 months now. It's so hot where we are up in Santa Clarita. I live right outside of LA. And so it's the valley, it's super hot up here. And we can't walk the dog until later in the day because it's just too hot. And so it's just been really nice taking these walks with the dog, just him and I. It's a chance for us to sort of connect, because our days are crazy and busy. And just these little walks, we walk between 1 and 3 miles and let the dog run and play. And that has been a really great reset for me. So yeah, I think it's awesome that you highlighted that it doesn't have to be this big, amazing, thing. Those are good too, if you can have all that. But it's the little things too, right? I mean, I love that. But I want to speak to also, if you have any advice, right? Because a lot of my listeners are photographers, creatives of all kinds. And I hear that a lot from people, is that I just have so many things I want to do and I don't know how I can do it. What do you find supports you in that process? How do you think you're able to actually scale, leverage, build, with all of these creative ideas? What supports you in that process?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. I actually had a conversation with one of my strategists the other day about this very thing. And I think for me, being able to be very prolific with creative work and doing a whole plethora of different things within it, that's what actually feeds everything else. Because there are those days and those projects where I'm like, oh, I'm just not feeling this. And oh man, I need to get inspired somehow. But because I'm doing so many creative things, something's going to give me a little spark. And once you have that spark, and once you do something that you find creatively fulfilling, I feel like that can feed everything else. That makes it so much easier to dive into a project that you may not have as much energy for. But if you've already done something that feels very fulfilling to you, I feel like that can feed everything.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because you're right. Creativity really just breeds creativity. You know what I mean? And I think that even as creatives, we can forget that. We can get stuck in this business aspect of it, and we lean too heavily into it. And it's oh, well, I don't know how. Well, yes, you do. You just need to do something creative. And then, like you said, it'll lead you to that next place, right? Something I always like to ask or remind myself of, and I tell this to my coaching students too, is what's the next right step, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like we kind of tend to get so ahead of ourselves. And I feel like if we just break it down and remember, okay, well, what is the next right step from here? I don't have to see the whole end yet, but what is this next step that I can take? So what other kind of things, like I know that you're really into wellness, and I know that you're into a little bit of the woo woo too, right? Like, so I'd love to hear how that is incorporated in your life. Obviously you've got strategy down, but how do you incorporate the woo, the spiritual, the feminine energies, things like that into your life on the daily?
Well, first of all, I love that phrase, the next right step. I lean into that heavy too, because as most people are aware, when you're running a business, it can get overwhelming. Like there are so many little things that you have to do within your business to make it run properly. And when I do start to feel like that little bit of anxiety or like overwhelm where I'm like, what do I need to do? Like there's so many things. It's honestly that next right step. Just do the next little thing, and that will set you on the pathway to getting everything else done. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad that you called that out. That was a good tip. For the woo side of things, first of all, I love that you have that in your podcast title. That got me excited. Woo is big for me. Like I feel like we're all spiritual beings, and I've definitely been on a big spiritual journey, especially over the last decade. And it's been everything from a lot of deep personal development work to going and doing plant medicines. I had an ayahuasca journey down in Costa Rica, and all of it plays a part into, the success of my business and everything that I'm working on creatively. Because I feel like when you do tap into that spiritual side of things and then you're it's creating this beautiful flow with what I think is the divine. Like, I think that we get a lot of inspiration and downloads from the source energy, or if you want to call it God. I think that once you tap into that, you're able to pull ideas and inspiration and joy and energy from that you can use towards anything else that you're creating in the world.
Yeah, I fully agree. I talk about that. I have to remind myself of that too. I definitely feel like that is part of the, reminding ourselves to lean into the receiving, because there's so much that's already there for us, but we get very caught up in the doing and the having to do and checking things off the list. And I love a good to-do list and checking them off just as much as anybody else. But there's so much power really in just receiving and just allowing yourself to receive what is there for you. So I love that, brought that up as well. And yeah, the woo, when I was coming up with the podcast name, and honestly, like I wanted to run a podcast for a while, and it was the name and the I guess the topic that really got me stuck. I found myself getting really stuck in this. Well, I am a photographer and I am a coach, but I don't want to just talk about that, right? Like this kind of leads back to like the beginning of our conversation, like multifaceted, multi-passionate people. Like I want to be able to like lean into everything that makes, sense to me and things that I know have helped me, and also have these amazing guests on. So that's where the woo comes in for me. And I think that it's one of my favorite questions to ask, right? I love asking each guest, like, what does the woo mean for you, right? Like, how woo are you? And seeing kind of where people fall. So you really kind of embody it on a daily basis, right? Like you kind of like, are you into like the crystals? Are you into meditations? Do you like hypnosis? I love the ayahuasca. It'll something that I'll probably never do. So I'd love to hear your take on that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, I'm not as much of a crystal girly like a lot of my friends are. I haven't really gone in that direction. But for me, it's been daily habits. I feel like I lean more into the spiritual, the woo side of daily habits than anything else. That feels the best to me. So it can be waking up in the morning and making sure that, I drink my lemon water while I'm going and having a mini breathwork session. I love breathwork. It's been huge for me.
Oh, yes.
Breathwork just like taps me into something. It energizes. It's all the things for me. And so leaning into that kind of stuff in the morning, and then, pausing to have like little moments of meditation, or if I'm stressed, like, getting out into the sun or something like that. All of those things feel like they're reconnecting me with the spiritual and the woo side of things, so that I can come back recentered and more calm and feeling good and able to show up as my best self.
Yeah, those daily habits make a big difference, don't you find? Like if, you kind of are you the kind of person who likes to have the same routine every day, or do you like just sort of let things flow when you get up? Like, or do you have like non-negotiables that you have to do every day?
Yeah. So every morning I make sure that the first thing that I do is either a breathwork or meditation, but I am the type of person that likes to lean into the feelings and being like, okay, what does my body need right now? What does my spirit need right now? And kind of flowing with that throughout the day.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think that's probably a big theme for most creatives that I know, especially the ones that I work with. I'm very much like that. I like to have at least, before I go to bed, I like to have like at least an idea of what I'm going to do in the morning, what I need to sort of do to support myself in those processes. But I also really like the flow. I really like being open to, best intentions. We could definitely, have a plan, but we also have to be, I think, flexible sometimes too. And just knowing that, okay, well, whatever comes through is meant for me, and we'll see what shows up. Something that I have written on my wall in my bathroom is, I wonder what magic and miracles can show up today. Because it's always like the first thing I like to see. It's such a fun thing to look at first thing in the morning. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I wonder what cool stuff's going to happen today. Because then it implants that, right, in our unconscious. And so we're looking for it too, which is really cool. But it just opens it up.
I love that. And they call those powerful questions when you're like questioning, like, what's the best thing that can possibly happen right now? Like it kind of gets you in that energy of attracting it, because we have to feel into, the vibration that we want to attract. And so that's a powerful way to do it, is ask questions. Mm-hmm. And also, we have a mutual friend. My business coach is Tiffany Napper.
Yes, I love Tiffany.
I love Tiffany. And she is leaning into what she's calling her soft CEO era. And I love that. Like that resonated hard with me, because I've gone many, many years where it was like hustle and grind.
Same.
And I am shifting into alignment and flow. And goodness, it feels so much better.
Absolutely. I know. I love that she's doing that and that she's really embracing it. We've kind of been talking about that for a little while. It's definitely been top of mind for me for at least a good year and a half, 2 years now. And because she and I had met during a mastermind, and that's when I was really just kind of starting to do that shift of like, okay, I'm really good at this hustling thing. I do love to work. Like I love what I do, but that's not really where I want to be. Right. Especially because like I'm going to be 53 in another month. So I don't,
give me all the
it's just skincare. I'm too chicken to do anything else. But like, I really I have grown kids. My life is in a different place now. You know what I mean? Like I do still have some of the same desires and wants, but some of it has shifted. And so what does that really look like for me? Like, what does that really look like? Well, for me, like, honestly, it's leaning into this like softness and, receiving and not as pushing as hard. I do like the balance. I'm a Libra rising. So I definitely I like my balance, you know what I mean? But I do know that it's really almost impossible to achieve that balance. It's always going to be tipped. Like something's always going to be tipped higher or lower. So it's more about, for me, integrating. Like, how can I integrate the strategy with the woo, with my, support practices so that I can just live a better life? And you're right. I love that you brought up the attraction, the energetic vibration, and that whole thing. So what do you think has been a very big factor for you? Because you had the agency, now you have this other agency, you've kind of have all of this, but you're also a creator for Playboy. You're still doing a lot of like really cool of your own branding and being out, like really expressing that part of yourself. Do you feel like you've always sort of attracted that sort of energy? even like with your music and everything coming up? Or is it something that you've maybe focused more on as you've gotten older? Has it changed?
Yeah, I definitely feel like I've been focusing on it more and leaning into it more as I've gotten older. I think, just by nature of society, I went through a long stretch where it was all about the hustle and the grind. And as soon as I started leaning into the spiritual work and leaning into the daily mindful practices, I was like, oh, it's possible to achieve the same level or greater work without going through the hustle and the grind. It's possible to find that alignment and flow through these practices. And with that, I started feeling better in my body. I started feeling more energized. I started creating for Playboy, and that felt like beautiful because I'm a big, huge fan of like shame-free sensuality.
Yes.
And that's been a process too, because I grew up super, super religious. And so one of the things you had asked about earlier was my ayahuasca journey.
Do you find yourself wrestling with your unconscious mind all the time? Find it hard to get out of your own way? Maybe you just want to find a better way to relax. Well, hypnosis can do all of this and more for you, so I want to share my hypnosis tracks with you. I've bundled them on a private podcast feed called Calibrate, where I also walk you through some deeper mindset strategies. New episodes are added monthly and sometimes more. The price will increase over time, but you'll be locked in forever at the price you purchase it for. If this sounds intriguing to you, head over to renee.io, that's renee.io/calibrate, and check it out. Listeners of this podcast can use the code TTDW to get it for 10% off.
And during that journey, one of the things that you question, one of the questions that you prompt ayahuasca during the journey is, show me my purpose. And ayahuasca came to me very clearly and told me that my purpose is to connect people in the earthly realm with the divine. So I get to be a conduit for that. And that feels very purposeful for me. That feels like I get to express myself as an extension of the divine to where people can feel that and people can tap into that themselves.
I love that. That is really cool because, and that whole thing is just so fascinating to me, just in general. Like I said, I love hearing people's stories about it and kind of where it has led them and awakened. What is it, awakened in them? But I also love that leaning into, like you said, leaning into that shameless femininity and sexuality and playfulness that, especially coming from, like you said, something that was more of a religious background. I mean, I can relate. I was definitely brought up very Catholic in the Deep South. And so I get, did you find that you had to do a lot of undoing as you went through that, or was it easy? Like, what was that process like for you?
It definitely felt like an undoing because, growing up very religious, I was also homeschooled. And so most of my days were spent, either living on this beautiful farm in Sandy, Oregon, and doing my homeschooling or playing music or being in church. And so that was very much indoctrinated in me, those principles. And part of it was, there was a lot of shaming that happened. And I grew up in a religion called Seventh-day Adventism. And so it was everything from no pop music, no makeup, no jewelry, no tattoos. And of course, sexuality comes along with a lot of that, like feeling comfortable in your body, no dancing. So I didn't even feel like I was in my body for many, many years. So it was a process of exploration. And what feels right to me, what feels comfortable to me, because I believe that sexuality, sensuality is one of the most beautiful things that we get to experience as humans in a lifetime. So I don't think that there should be any shame around it. And it's been a beautiful exploration and a beautiful process to come to that conclusion for me.
Yeah, I can imagine. And have you found that, has it even helped your business side of stuff? Like, has it even, given back to that side as well? Like, opened up more, not opened up my doors, but maybe like helped you expand that energetic vibe?
Yeah, I feel like when I am, sexually expressive or in my feminine sensuality, that it energizes and enlivens me in every area of life. And also not discounting the fact that most of my client base are male entrepreneurs. So I think that, there's potentially a side of that helped because I like polarity. So I feel like me, when I'm in my divine feminine, I tend to attract the divine masculine.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's worked out very, very well for me in business to have that as my client base.
I like that example. And not just specifically about this, but like I did want to ask just in general, what kind of resistance or skepticism or anything like that have you received, maybe even about that or about anything as you've been building these businesses? Have you faced any of that? And if so, how have you navigated that?
Are you speaking specifically towards like being expressive and also running a business at the same time?
I mean, not necessarily. I would imagine that would probably come up. You know what I mean? Like, I would assume that might be something you've had to deal with, but it could just be about anything else. Like, I just like asking people, kind of getting into the behind the scenes of, because we all have, I think, this underlying fear or aversion to bad press or any kind of resistance, right? Like, we have like this deep seated, I find that a lot of people that I work with anyway are almost afraid to express themselves fully, right? Because they're afraid of what's going to happen. And so I'm always interested to find out when people who really are like living fully, like you are, like, has this happened to you? And if so, like, how did you navigate that process? And what are some of the ways that help you get more focused on where you want to go as opposed to where you've been?
Yeah. Okay. That's a beautiful question. So for me, I'm thinking back even to announcing my Playboy platform. And I was like, oh man, a lot of my clients follow me. Like, is this going to be like any sort of backlash? Like, is it going to be weird for me to like be doing both at the same time? And honestly, once I got into that place of feeling like, no, this is right for me, this feels aligned, I don't feel any shame around it. It felt like the right time. And I have only received supportive, encouraging messages. And not just from male clients, from females too, because when females see that you're like expressing yourself in a really, full, beautiful way, they feel that too. They feel like they can do that too. It can inspire people to tap into their own divinity.
Absolutely. And that goes in line with that purpose you were speaking to, what you are sort of here to do, connect, to their divinity. And so by living it, and I really do feel like there's so much power in that. Like, the more that we are fully ourselves, the more we will be able to inspire other people to be that as well, but also connect others. And the more you that you are, the better just in general, right? And you probably talk a lot about that with your branding clients, with your agency. So I know that that's probably a really big part of what you guys do. And a little bit of a segue into that, because I know a lot of my clients are still either thinking about their branding or trying to find their branding. Like, what would you encourage a newer sort of creative or someone who's just sort of, embarking upon this journey? Like, what would be a good first or second step for them to take as far as like finding their identity within their brand?
Yeah. And I think you're totally right. Like, that is something that I've leaned into heavy for branding. And probably one of the reasons that I was initially drawn to that within creative work is because I do get to talk to people and draw out what is it about them that is like really unique and special. And then how do we push that out into the world in a beautiful way? So for me, branding is just the outward expression, the outward presentation of who you are and what you do. So when we lean into the strategy side of branding, we usually do a long interview with people and really tap into that. Like, what is it that lights you up personally? What is it that makes you unique and makes you feel like the most authentic expression of yourself in the world. And I think that that's a process, those sort of powerful questions, once again, that you can ask yourself if you're starting your own personal brand or your own company. You can start asking those questions about your authentic truth, and then pair that with what is the look and the feel and the voice and the tone and all the things that go into branding with what is the most special thing about you. And, if people can tap into that, I think that it's really going to resonate with their audience no matter what. If they're being authentic, I think that's going to resonate.
And I know we toss that word around a lot right now, authenticity, but it's true. Like we say it for a reason because it does matter, right? I mean, the more authentic you can be, because there's so much out there now. There's so much saturation. I mean, I talk about marketing a lot with my client base, and there is a ton of saturation of every little niche. So, when we're thinking about in terms of standing out, really the best tool that you have in your tool belt is going to be you and how you can leverage it. And that I think that branding, that's what I love, with what you do and branding in general, I think is so fun because you get to create this, like I said, leverage the power of being you in whatever that looks like.
Yeah, I love that phrase, leverage the power of being you. That's totally true. And, we'll often get clients who are the founders of their company, and they'll come in and they won't want to play an active role in like their social media, for instance. And I'm like, I really think that's important because, like you said, if you can leverage the power of you and push that out into the world, that's what's going to sell it. Like nobody is going to be able to sell you and your company better than you. Ideally, like you can always have people who can support it and do like the technical side of things, but you have to be the one that's holding that torch and saying like, this is what we stand for. This is who we are.
Yeah, I know. And those of you guys who listen to this podcast, often that I am a Simon Sinek fangirly. So I talk about Simon Sinek and his whole start with why and all of that stuff a lot. Maybe one day I'll have him on the podcast and I'll be a super fangirl. But that's what this is really about. Like, right, Pat, people don't buy what you do. They buy why you do it. And so, getting people to really, by asking them those questions that you were talking about, like really trying to uncover what is it about that? Like, why are you doing what you're doing? You've been doing it. Like it's there. You probably just haven't like highlighted it and been intentional with the messaging. And that's what branding really, I think, needs to be. It's really the first step. When people come to coach with me, is a first step. We go into the why. Like you're going to know your why and your purpose, like no matter what, because I feel like everything has to flow from there. You have to know what that is and what your intentions are for your business, have clarity on that so that then you can build upon it and then show up for yourself. That was the other part that I wanted to ask you about as well. And you mentioned like, okay, I do have some people who don't really love that, you know what I mean? And I see that a lot. I see this a lot, especially with photographers, especially female photographers, and especially female photographers who are closer to my age. They really don't want to show up on camera. They really don't want to show up for their brand. And it's something that I talk to them about a lot too. What would you say to someone in that position? I mean, we know the importance of it. We definitely know it is important to show up, but how can someone start to feel a little bit more comfortable in their skin, showing up, all that stuff that comes up, right?
Yeah. And just circling back to Simon Sinek, his process of starting with the why is something that we actually start with in the brand strategy process. We always dig into that. And it starts with like a conversation with the person to find out, what they are passionate about, what is driving them to do this very thing. And to answer your question, like, I think that that's one of the things that can help people get comfortable with presenting themselves or presenting their own message is realizing and recognizing what is truly the driving force within them. Because, if somebody's starting a business or a brand, it's in there somewhere. And it can be a process to dig it out for people, but then putting the right language around it, it gets them comfortable with being able to present what truly matters to them. So I think that, if somebody's starting a business or a brand and they're wanting to get comfortable presenting themselves, if they went through a branding process, it would probably be really smart, and it will enliven them, and it will also give them a lot of confidence with presenting themselves on camera and saying the right things and in the right tone to where it feels really unique and really genuine.
Yeah. I know it's such a huge hurdle for people, but you're right. I mean, just going that one step at a time too, because I feel like a lot of people, they get very overwhelmed, especially creatives with our creative brains. We get very, tend to be overwhelmed by all the things. So like, okay, maybe you're just starting out and maybe you're just building your company and you feel like you've got to do all of these things. Well, not yet, right? You can take little baby steps along the way. But I do think and agree with you that one of the foundational steps really should be those questions, working on that why, working on that purpose, really getting clarity on really why you're doing this. Because yeah, we all want to make money. Okay. We love money. It's awesome. We want to make money and we want to, we might even have the idea of like, okay, well, I want to serve people in this way, but it's deeper than that. And I really feel like the deepest part of us, like as deep as we can go with the why. And those of you who coach with me know that I really harp on this with them because I feel like it has to be like a core, like, oh, it's not there. I can't get past it yet. And then it's there all of a sudden. It's like a revelation. I just had somebody message me yesterday on Voxer and she was like, I feel like all the weeds have cleared out. I feel like it was there and then we weeded it out and we got it. And so I just love when that happens. I'm sure that's a really fun thing for you guys to see too, as, with the branding agency and the things that you do. But you're right. Leading you back to you, right? Always fall back to yourself.
Yeah. And, leaning into the woo side of things in business has been big for me with branding too, because initially when I was doing a lot of the hands-on work, I would sit down with a project and tap into somebody's energy and be like, okay, what does this want to be? And when I was doing like the design or the look and feel or the messaging for somebody, I was tapping into that because it's there. Like everybody has a unique frequency. Everybody has unique drivers. So if you can tap into that for them, you can usually pull that out and then be able to show them how to express it, which I think is just a beautiful way to pair this with woo.
Yeah, you're so right. It really is. It's like, I always kind of talk about that being heart-centered, like really trying to like work from the heart center, right? Because when our heart center is open, first of all, it can be very vulnerable. A lot of people have a hard time working on that. And there's a lot of different ways. Like if you're listening and trying to figure out like, well, how would I even do that? Well, there's a lot of different ways. Lyric mentioned breathwork, which is super powerful. Meditation, hypnosis is a big thing for me because I'm certified in that. So I love hypnosis, but literally it could be as easy as just sitting down and taking 3 minutes, not even 5 full minutes, but 3 minutes, just hand over your heart and breathing into it and just creating with that intention. Like I'm opening my heart. I'm going to lead with my heart. And what does this tell me? Like what can I receive from this information? Because we're all intuitive, right? Like we all have these gifts. I truly believe we all do.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think it's the stillness and the quiet that allows you to hear that inner voice, that inner knowing that we all have. It often gets overshadowed by all of the stuff that we're trying to do and be in the world. But if you come back to that stillness, it's going to come through. It's going to start speaking.
100%. Yes, I love that. So it's a good takeaway for you guys too. Just, the stillness, there's a lot of answers in that. There really are. I know it can be very uncomfortable if you're not used to doing that kind of work yet, but the more you do it, the easier it will get. And I do think that is one of the best places to start. So before we wrap up, tell me a little bit about, you've got something new coming out that is wellness based. Tell me about that a little bit, because that sounds fascinating to me.
Our whole conversation, I feel like, was perfectly directed to this moment. So I'm starting a company called Cloud Spa, and Cloud Spa is an online wellness platform where we're going to have daily mindful practices in a group setting online with a live guide. Because what we were finding when we were looking at the marketplace is the options for daily mindful practices were mostly pre-recorded. However, when you're doing a practice like that, it takes away the human connection aspect, which I think is equally as important. That's one of the key factors for blue zones in the world, where people are known to live longer, happier, healthier lives, is having that community connection. So we're starting a platform where we'll always have a live coach for these daily mindful practices. And so you get to come on and have like a breath work or a guided meditation or a journal prompt or even a yoga session. And you'll always have that community aspect to really solidify what you're doing and to amplify it too, because there's power in that collective energy. When it comes to healing, when it comes to any sort of wellness practice, I think that having the community part of it is really powerful.
So true. Like, they've done so many studies on you live longer, like you said, these blue zones, but like you literally will live longer, if you have deeper connections and you have a sense of community. So I love that. So when is that coming out? And, how can people find out more about that?
Yeah, so you can go to cloudspa.com right now and sign up for the mailing list. And on that mailing list, it gives you options for what you're most interested in within wellness. So it could be, if you're a facilitator, you can sign up for that list and we'll send you information when we're ready to start taking on new facilitators. And then you can sign up for the general list or various other things at cloudspa.com. And we're in the process of working on the community platform. So that's being built right now, and we're hoping to launch by the end of the year and then have that new year, new me opportunity for people starting in January.
Love it. Okay, well, that's really exciting. That's going to be really cool. So before we leave, tell everybody where they can find you. Where is your preferred platform? Where do you like to connect with people? That kind of thing.
So I'm big on Instagram. So Lyric Everly on Instagram. And in my bio section, you'll find all my links to everything there. I also have a direct links page for, all the companies that we're working on, all the different projects, to Playboy, all those things. If you go to allmylinks.com/Lyric Everly, you'll find all the links there.
Awesome. And I'll, of course, put all of this in the show notes for you guys too, but I just wanted to make sure I had it all down. So thank you so much for joining us. This was a really awesome conversation. I knew we would find a lot to talk about.
My pleasure, Renee. That was so awesome. Like, I enjoyed talking about every single topic that you brought up. So thank you for making this fun.
You're so welcome. Thanks again. I told you guys she was dynamic and amazing. I know you're going to walk away with some really good takeaways, but as a creative, I think it's very inspiring to hear about being such a multifaceted, multi-passionate person and not feeling like you have to stick to one thing. I'm telling you guys, like, we're on the precipice of what I believe to be a really amazing and incredible time in history. I feel like with all of the technological advances that we're having all at once, and the fact that we're moving out of this, severe hustle culture, we have to do things a certain way, and moving more into flow and receiving and feminine energy as a whole, I feel like this combination is just ripe for creativity, right? And so if you allow yourself to lean into that and not fight it and see how that can show up for you in your life and your business, I really feel like that's where your sweet spot is. That's where you're going to find more purpose, more connection. And I love the conversation that Lyric and I had that sort of intertwines all of that. So I hope you get a lot from this episode. I know I did. I love meeting new people, finding out what makes them tick. Let me know your feedback on this. Share it on social. Hit me up at Renee Bowen on Instagram. Take a screenshot and share on social, and make sure to tag both of us over there as well. I'll have all the details in the show notes for you guys of everything that was mentioned. And I cannot wait to talk to you guys again. Have an amazing rest of your week.